Months, we went from just 2 countries which had their schools shut down to the entire globe had their schools shut down. And so in 2 months, 194 countries and 1.6 billion learners were out of school. That's crazy. So we were suddenly, all of us, part of an unprecedented global social experiment that goes on even today, right? And in March, on March 11th, I actually went back and looked this up. I got an email from Young Zhao. So it basically said, hope you're well. So that was just perfunctory. He said that, but then he really got on to what he wanted to talk about, which is that he had a thought experiment that what if the coronavirus forces schools to close for more than a year? And at that time, I remember sort of laughing at that. And I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. So I sort of blame him in part for the extent of this coronavirus going on for this long. So it's all Young Zhao's fault. But what he asked was like, hey, I'm sending this email to a bunch of people. Would you guys like to join in for a Zoom call? So this was March 11th. And we started this thing called Silver Lining for Learning. The first episode was actually aired on YouTube Live on March 21st. And the people who were involved in it were Chris Dede from Harvard, Curt Bonk from Indiana, myself, Scott McLeod from Colorado, Denver, Shuangye Chen from East China Normal, and of course, the instigator himself, Young Zhao. Scott was part of this for around 30 episodes. Other commitments came along, but he was critical to kicking this off. So we are deeply appreciative of that. We would have liked to have everybody, all the hosts here, but Chris couldn't make it, and it's some weird time in China for Shuangye. Chris has this weird excuse, which I don't give much credence to, that his wife was going to get some vaccine today or something. I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. But anyway, we do have Curt and Zhao with us today. Just a snapshot, we have had 52 episodes over the last year, plus a bunch of side conversations and blog posts by people who have written for us. I went back and actually counted last night. We have 90 plus guests from across the world. The YouTube channel is not going to make us millionaires, but has over 13,000 views of the different videos. And as you can see, the website has visitors. Of course, the United States is up there, but you can see that there is a kind of a global reach to this as well. So what we thought we would do today is actually, given there are so many episodes, is have each of us talk a little bit about what were our favorite episodes. So Young Zhao is going to lead us on first. So Zhao, you're on.
Thank you, Punya. That was a very, very good introduction, much better than what I can do. And it's so good to be back to site. I think it is in site that you had me over to speak once, right? I think it was, I've always had good memory of site, and I've seen it growing. And so thank you, really, that's something. And also, first have a chance to share what we've learned on, out of Silver Lining is also wonderful. So the episodes I've chosen mostly have to do with the student autonomy. How do we drive, students to become the owners of learning? I'm sorry, my phone is ringing, and it has nothing to do with me, but it just rings. So one of the first episodes I would like to share with you is really by Dr. Stephen Harris, who was a principal of a school in Australia, and now runs an organization called Learn Life in Barcelona, Spain. The new effort is really about getting children to drive their own learning, but also connecting with adults. So they're running this in Barcelona, but also they plan to spread across the world. And the main message is that students can drive their learning. Students can choose what to learn. Students can engage in project or problem-based learning, and students are responsible managers of their own learning. And also another big piece is the idea of connecting children to adults. That's really powerful. Adults, especially retired adults, it would live much longer years. They have a desire to interact with younger generations, and our younger generations in
Very
schools
good.
need to have
I know this is a crazy couple of weeks with different holidays and spring break issues, and good for you. Excellent. I got
I was just wondering, was that okay? All right. So we just got some interactions there. So Punya, can you go next slide, please? And another episode which was really interesting is we had students from Beijing, from the Beijing Peking University's affiliated high school. That's really a Dalton Academy. We had students from Hawaii. We have students from Sydney, and they came to this one and they talked a lot about how they've driven their own learning during COVID-19. That they took on different projects, they wrote different essays, they did different research, but most impressive is how students were enjoying that process. As you know, during COVID-19, many schools try to do online courses, remote learning. They're trying to translate the existing school onto their in online format. That did not necessarily work out very well, but what we learned from students is that when they are made the owners of their own learning, when they enjoy the autonomy and opportunity for self-determination, learning happens greatly. Thanks, Punya. Next one. Then we had another one. This is a beautiful organization. It's really called the Global Online Academy. It's been in existence for a few years, started with a group of private schools across the globe, really trying to say, none of us can do courses for all of our students to meet the personalization needs. Can we get together? So they formed this Global Online Academy, which has really exploded because of COVID-19. And all the schools, now they have several hundred schools join in from different countries, and they allow their students to take courses online, and the online courses is counted towards their existing curriculum. They get the credits, and also this has become a place for teacher training to train teachers how to teach online. As you can imagine, COVID-19 has created dramatic need for that. So the Global Online Academy, I encourage all of you to check it out, to see how students can drive their own learning and expand their learning to learn new possibilities that the school cannot organize. I think it's important that the schools recognize that and then decided that they can collaborate. This means they have to trust each other's courses. They have to trust the courses to be good enough. And also they have to, sometimes, this schools may be in competition, but they have to say, well, we're not going to compete in this domain. We're going to share our resources and provide teacher training. I think this is a great model for the future. And the last one, I think it's a great thing. This is not, well, has to do with student autonomy, student learning as well, but really it comes from the large scale learning environments. And we got two professors from the University of Washington to come to talk about their book, Writers in a Sacred Garden. They did a lot of research on the fan fiction. And one of the authors had that experience. You can write about Harry Potter, you can write about Star Wars, but many, it's good for middle school students, high school students to get into this large scale learning environments. And also, by the way, large scale learning environments is much more than the fan fiction. You have a lot more learning possibilities, in different places. And this, enables an informal, natural learning, which should give all of us insight, an idea about how our students are learning differently, how our students can learn differently, and then we need to drive them to learn differently. So that's the few episodes I would like to summarize, and I want to thank you.
Thank you, Zhao. Moving now on to Curt Bonk from Indiana, who just got a haircut.
It was 5 or 6 inches longer yesterday at this time. I have parted with something that's been attached to me for a long time. I'm a little sad, but I've been running like Forrest Gump for the past year, last 378 days. So I thought I'd grow my hair like him, but it finally got to be too much. I'm not Michael Rapp. who hasn't cut his hair since 2017. It's nice to be back at site. I believe it or not, it was 1998 when I presented on conferencing on the web, the COW project. We get teachers to interact about cases from around the world, actually. And I remember that conference in DC fondly because I met Birch Bayh, former senator, in the subway. Also, I was the keynote in 1997 and did a little road trip from the University of Houston to San Antonio. It was a fun driving my car with Tom Reynolds. It was a fun trip to hang out with people like Pat Dixon that Punya and Young worked with. And in 2012, also running a symposium there. So it's just, I haven't been there since 2012, so I'm really delighted. In a year ago, or a little over a year ago, when Young contacted me, I was in Portland visiting my son, and he had this brilliant idea or crazy idea, whatever it was. I said, okay, you know, I knew that Young was a brilliant guy because I read his books, and buy his books, by the way, you know, they're wonderful. Education Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, and World-Class Learners. And I knew Chris Dede because I read him in grad school. And I met him at one of my first conferences I went to for AERA, and Chris Dede is just a brilliant futurist. He's been a leader in the field forever, and Punya is Punya, the most creative man in the field. So the feedback guy. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And little did I know we'd be still doing this today. So, you know, our first guest the week after we met was the School in the Cloud guy, Sugata Mitra, the guy who won Outstanding TED Award and he's inspired Slumdog Millionaire. So if we start off with a crazy man like that who won the Outstanding TED Talk, things were on their way with that first one. So, you know, I said, oh, okay. So Punya, go to the next slide in there. And so I had done a book on MOOCs and open education in the Global South, and there were some various people who had written for that book that had done some cool things. And one of them was a Cornell professor who got kids around the planet to clean up the environment via a MOOC. And she was calling it MOOCs for a Cause. Now that's pretty brilliant. You know, STEM education, trying to teach STEM education, but in a global way and have it turned into a local initiative, so from global to local. And her name is Marianne Krasny. And look, I'm happy to share anything I talk about. I could share that chapter with all of you. So that was a real inspiring one because she had people from South Africa, from Iran, from China, from the Caribbean, from Colombia in South America, and other parts of the world co-authoring that chapter with her. And so I thought that was totally inspiring stuff. And we ended up running 4 environmental shows. That was one of 4. We had another one 2 weeks ago on forestry in the Asia Pacific region from people at University of British Columbia. We had one from my friend Cassandra Brooks. Now, Cassandra I knew when she was a master's student studying the Antarctic toothfish, what you would know as the Chilean sea bass, and the krill down in Antarctica. If you type in her name and type in CNN video, you can watch her stop motion video of the ship going through the ice for a couple months in Antarctic waters. It's very, very cool. It's been watched by nearly 1 million people. But Cassandra, she is now a professor at the University of Colorado, inspiring people in marine science, but also use of media to teach about environmental issues. And so she's extremely knowledgeable about the use of educational technology for environmental reasons. And so they're trying to save pieces of the ocean called the Last Ocean Project, and actually have made success in saving part of the ocean from not being fished out. And so she inspired all of us that day with that particular presentation that she had and the Q&A. So I highly recommend talking to her. She was initially part of the Exploratorium Ice Stories project. So the Exploratorium in San Francisco had a series of initiatives, one called Ice Stories, which got researchers in Antarctica to talk about their research and letting kids all around the world ask them questions about that research. When they're on the ship, they only had 1 hour of internet access late at night, but they did have global collaboration happening from the ship to kids in the Philippines or Indonesia or wherever. So that was pretty cool. The next one, Punya. And so the following week, or a few weeks later, we had another friend of mine, Jean Pennycook, and Jean is known as the Penguin Lady. She's been studying the Adali penguin for a number of years, 15, 16 years, and penguins maybe altogether 20 years. It happens to be a COVID time, so she was available for us from her home in California. She wasn't down in Antarctica a couple months back when we had her on the show. But she streams live penguin cam coverage to kids in schools in North America and around the world, and sends lesson plans to them. It's National Science Foundation funded some of this work that she makes highly engaging, interactive for kids. And she's extremely excited to keep going down to there. She maybe another crazy person. I wouldn't do it. I grew up in Wisconsin. I don't want that cold anymore. But anyways, we had that show, which was you would see to be very global. And in fact, what's happening is that learning happens where human beings are. You know, the Mars rovers will undoubtedly have classroom projects or streaming data for classroom projects to occur. You know, every Friday, the International Space Station flying up above, has interacts via video conferencing with kids in schools. So that's just one example. Next one, Punya. And so it's been exciting to have those shows, but also to have more recently, 3 friends of mine from East China Normal, from Beijing Normal, Meifeng Liu, from Chongbuk National University, Okwa Lee, who's from Seoul, and In-sung Jung from International Christian University in Japan. So we had someone from Japan, Korea, and China talk about what's happened during the past year in COVID times in the respective places, but also the fact that they are 3 preeminent leaders in the field of educational technology. And we had them talk about what got them to be a well-known woman leader, and what other young people might think about today that might enhance their careers. So it was a rather fascinating session. It was just last Saturday. And In-sung is a grad of our program at Indiana, and in Okwa I went to grad school with. So it's just great to see my friends after being stuck in a bubble for a year, So part of this, I think we're partly, just happy to do the show because we get to get outside our little bubbles. Paul Kim was a show that Chris Dede had pointed out as being one of his favorites. And Paul Kim is at Stanford running the SMILE project, the Stanford Mobile Inquiry Learning Environment, and now has the SMILE Up project, which is AI-based questioning. So it can label or the level of questions that kids ask on a scale of 1 to 5, not full bloom 1 to 6, but 1 to 5 levels of questions. And it has a database of millions of questions to analyze them at. It can also generate questions at those 5 distinct levels. So it's really a fascinating system, and plus it's free. So Paul's been traveling the world doing various projects, the Pocket School project with kids where the teacher is in your pocket, your MP3 player, when he's working with Honduras kids or kids in Mexico or blind children in India or in Dominican Republic, Rwanda. He's traveled the world to increase the literacy skills of students. And so he's done fascinating work for a long time, and he's in My World is Open book with the Pocket School project. You can read about that.
All right, thank you, Zhao. Thank you, Curt. So moving on to my stories that I picked. I was really interested in this idea, when that at some level, suddenly what COVID did was make local, global sort of seamless, right? Which is everybody was in the same boat across the world. And so I chose 4 stories which speak to this idea of global education, extended classrooms. So there is one from the US, one Indian, one African, and one in Nepal. The second piece that I want to emphasize is that increasingly coming to realize that it is leadership, culture, and systems that need to become resilient, that need to be able to address challenges of this sort. So the first one that I want to talk about is Sean Lesher, who was our guest on episode 10. Sean is the CEO of Urban Discovery Schools and Inner City K-12 public school system in San Diego. He's a TED Ed innovator, educator. Also got his PhD from ASU, which is good. What Sean does so well is that he brings design thinking and action research to all aspects of how his school functions. Interestingly, like all schools in California were closed starting Friday, March 13th of last year. His school system was one of the few which was ready and open on March 16th. And he has also shared some of his sort of learnings through that process on the Silver Lining website through blog posts and so on, which I really recommend that you go and watch. One thing that stands out for Sean about, is this deep sense of values that he brings to the work that he does. And we did spend some time discussing that. And that connects to the next two people that we have. This is Kiran Sethi and Akash Sethi from India. Kiran in particular, again, is a designer who became an education reformer and social entrepreneur. And again, started this Riverside School 20 years ago. In fact, the 20th anniversary was this January. And I really recommend watching that episode for seeing somebody who brings so much joy and energy to the work, but is always so learner-centered. And both Sean and Kiran talked a lot about the role of the leader within this space and how they can, really learn to listen to the learners. And so if you'll see, some of the examples that I have picked really do not have to do much with technology, but they really have to do with the systems that are in place that support the learners. And technology has an important role to play there, but that's not all. The next one is from Africa. And this is, again, thinking about new technologies like AR, VR, and how they have become incredibly cheap and can be accessible. And if Chris would be here, because this is one of Chris's favorite episodes, he would talk about the fact that he has often said, which is that he truly believes that the next range of innovations that will come in the education space are going to be from what he calls, or what we call, the global south. That some of these barriers, I mean, I give the example of Bangladesh, for instance, which basically leapfrogged from the dial-up phone to cell phones within the period of 5 or 6 years. And so what we're seeing is, and again, the same mention of what Curt talked about with Paul Kim, which is that you can have a Raspberry Pi driven server with a lot of resources on it for $35. So I think we are living in a different world. I think this captures that to a certain extent. And finally, this one was an exciting one, how one individual, which is one of our guests, Baman Gimre, did I get muted by chance? Somebody muted me. Okay, all right, sorry. These are students in Nepal who have been able to access MOOCs and learn. And these are amongst the most remote places where they couldn't even have electricity or internet on a consistent basis. So they would download the files and watch them. The energy of these students is something to be believed. And what was most fascinating to me was that they started these MOOCs in order to learn English. And then, so one student, for example, Debushi, started when she was 10 years old and has now completed 30 courses on these MOOCs. And they have expanded this range of what they can do so let me see, let me try and get a quote. So this is a quote from a student who says, "It opened up a whole new world of learning. I was inside a bubble in which learning was limited to the subjects that were taught in our school, but that course has inspired me to learn other courses that are not in our books. For instance," she says, "I have been doing a course that is called Astro 101 Black Holes. I did another one on dinosaur paleobiology that inspired me to do that because it was a completely new course and I liked it very much." So I think these are some of these things that really stood out for me, is these systems that are in place that allow access to the motivated, to educators like Bauman who provide the support. And so I think this idea of designing systems and culture that allow for this to happen, learning to happen, is important. Creativity is key, that relationships are crucial. I think these are some of the things that really stood out for me from these episodes. I know, Curt, you wanted to add.
We're having a little fun here playing mute and unmute. But you know, it's more than this episode, but this is kind of the epitome for what's been happening. If you look at what's been going on in Nepal, you have leaders from the US consulate pairing up with teachers in what Motherland Secondary School and forming a network, not only of teachers talking about what kids can do during COVID, but of students. And so they're trying to get students to learn English skills get certificates from Harvard or Berkeley or wherever to get ready for college. But it ended up becoming much more than that. These kids were inspired to take dozens of MOOCs in paleontology, earth science, Egyptian history, you know, mathematics, whatever. And so my team is currently doing research on them in the midst of getting an IRB to interview them about their self-directed learning skills. And so I come up with a list of 10 things that really, I'll quickly go through this list, that are evident in the Paul Kim work, who's been a good friend of mine forever, but it's, you know, generating knowledge. In these shows, many are focused on generating and evaluating knowledge. Many are focused on collaboration and teaming and interactivity. Many are focused on, you know, the extended resources that are available, like this one. They had MOOCs available for kids to learn when they want to. And their parents were coming home from work amazed that kids weren't playing games on their computers. They were taking MOOCs. They were worried when they went from 55% internet access in Nepal to 75% in 1 year, kids would be playing games. And they were doing MOOCs. In their minds, that was playtime for them. It was serious play in effect. There's also some sense of novelty or variety in the Penguin Show and other environmental shows that we've had. And I'll point out, I got a book that's free called Adding Some Tech Variety. You can all download for free in Chinese and English at techvariety.com. There's a sense of empowerment or autonomy, a sense of self-directed learning that many of the people that we interviewed, that was their goal. Their goal was to create autonomous human beings, not to be controlled by the environment, not to be pawns, but to be in control of one's own learning and to take charge and to inspire. I mean, the Nepal one is one about inspiring kids to learn. And it's just that nudge, that excitement, that inspiration that pushed these kids to do so much more, to extend their learning. I got the list. Each kid was taking 15 odd MOOCs, and these were 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. That's mind-boggling. I mean, I didn't do that when I was good. I went to the library, of course, and checked out books like Young and Punya did, but it's just some of the stuff that we've uncovered during the past year has been exciting for all of us. We've often gotten done with the shows and said, wow, can you believe what they said? These high school kids are doing all that? We had Young had a show with kids from Hawaii and from China, as he mentioned, and Australia. He got done with that show. He said, the world's not in any trouble at all if these kids are any sign of the world population, because they're going to solve the environmental problems that we have. They were doing graduate work as high school students, literally. And so that's been very exciting. So there are various principles and so forth that I try and get at every week within the shows. And I've been, you know, maybe someday I'll write this up, but Young unmuted his mic. So I think he has something to say.
Well, no, I was just going to wait for Punya to finish. And
Okay.
by the way, I just want to acknowledge that my background, the virtual background, is made by Punya. I've been using it forever. Everybody's asking me, where'd you get that cool background? I said, well, no, now Punya is here. Talk to Punya, get a virtual background. Go for it.
All right. Thank you. So as you can see, this has been a completely unfunded project. You know, it's us meeting every Saturday, reaching out to people, having these conversations. It's been incredibly fulfilling. And so looking ahead, we have Diana Laurillard joining us for the next episode, which is on April 10th. So if you're interested, please join us talking about designing online collaborative professional development at scale. One of the things that
we might want to mention, she's from University College London. So she'll be talking about a lot of projects in London and in Europe. She knows everything about policy that you ever want to know about, you know, e-learning policy technology. She's just amazing. So come to that show.
Please do. One thing that we have noticed that over time, there has been a sort of a shift in focus from when we started to where we are now. And I want to talk briefly about that. So when we started, we had this, even the theme of the website was, as you can see, very gray because the COVID-19 crisis was just sort of crashing all over us. If you look at the initial videos, you'll see that the intro music is very, it's very, and over time, I think what we have actually managed to live up to the sort of silver lining idea that there is, even in this dark cloud, there is a silver lining. So that is sort of reflected now in the look and feel and the design of the website and even the music and so on. And so this website has been completely redesigned from bottom up. And we have, this is just some screenshots of that site. The second thing is that we really believe that over time, with this 52 episodes, we have actually built a pedagogical resource here. And all the content in this is, freely available through the Creative Commons. And we've already had some examples in the chat of people who have been, their students have gone and looked at it, and we are continuously looking to expand and build on this. I didn't know when we started Zhao, honestly, that we would be doing this a year on, but here we are, and it's my Saturday is this, so really excited. And finally, I would love for people who are interested to join us, subscribe to the web, go to the website and subscribe to it, recommend guests to us. We are looking for people who are doing interesting work, who are really pushing the boundaries in terms of different models, different systems, different ideas, and extend the conversation that we have going on. With that, we'll open it up for Q&A.
Punya, by the way, let me just add something. When people ask, why do you have this team? We apparently don't have women, do not have a lot of connections. But when I was thinking about who to invite to have this conversation, and luckily, I think I identified everybody has special contributions. If you look at everybody on the team, I can tell you all the beautiful looking things are done by Punya, videos edited by Punya, and music done. Curt's been great finding guests, finding people with different themes. I think, I won't say anybody, so just this is also an example of collaborative work, because we have to work with so many different people, and it's been a non-funded, nobody funds us, nobody supports us other than ourselves. I can't believe we're doing this. I think it's a good team. I think it's good in terms of how you form a team that may have different ideas and different expertise. So thank you.
You might want to tell Young about the journal that in Shuangye. You might want to mention them.
Oh yes, yeah. There's another reason. We have ECNU Review of Education, which is a journal published by I forgot, but anyway, one of the guys, the typical, or by not Springer, by I
Sage.
don't know. By Sage. Thank you. Thank you. I'm getting old. But anyway, by Sage, and so that journal summarizes some of our discussions and findings. And Shuangye has been a great contributor as a great co-host as well.
And you all might want to contact Shuangye Chen from East China Normal University and try and publish it. I mean, that if you're inspired by our show and come up with an idea, just write her an email and say, I was inspired by Silver Lining. I want to write this reflection paper, or I have written this reflection paper, 1,000, 2,000, how many words are they? About 3,000 words? 2,000 words?
Yes. And I think
journal.
the other thing to add is that it is an open source journal and there is no cost for publishing. So it's a great spot. I've had, I think three commentaries now published on that, two of which actually all three of which emerged from either conversations or ideas that were sparked by Silver Lining for Learning.
And so that was another inspiration to do this show. So that was a secondary reason, but it's an important reason.
Okay, let's take some questions if anyone has any. Or you are so amazed that you don't have questions, but comments are welcome too.
I will say, as people are coming up with questions, the only reason they ask me is because I wear a different colored tie every week, or a different colored suit every week.
I don't know. What's your budget for all your stuff?
Unlimited. Okay.
So Susie had this question about what are your plans for the future and how long do you plan to continue? Given that we had no plans when we started, I think we've had some discussions. And so Curt, Zhao, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're just having fun with this. I honestly feel this has become a space for me to think. I can see my ideas evolve over time around education, and just to listen to these inspirational guests, to have that 1 hour to spend with them has been valuable in and of itself. And the fact that it has been able to produce this content, which is now freely available on the website, honestly is a bonus. But I speak very selfishly. I mean, I can see this going on and on until we just run out of energy, I guess. But there is no dearth of wonderful educators doing fantastic work that we
So
can
that
talk to and learn
relates to
from.
Mary's question. What are the requirements for guest participation on your show? We have talked a lot about this, but one of the things we know, we want the guest to have done something amazing and educational innovations, perhaps with type technology and maybe not, but most likely it's technology driven innovations. You've done something, represent, a new trend in education, we think. And so, yeah, feel free to contact us, send us what you would like to, and we will deliberate on that. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, and I think one more thing that is interesting here is that um, all of us involved in it come at education slightly differently. So I tend to not bring more of the tech sort of people. I'm much more interested in sort of the systems that people, leaders are creating and the values that they bring to the process. And so all of us have slightly different tastes. So I think the range of people that we can invite is actually pretty wide, as long as that they're doing something which is seeking to transform and change education for all learners. I think that's the bottom line. And I know there's a lot of topics that we haven't covered in 52 episodes, and there will be a lot more. So we honestly look forward to recommendations. You can email us
with
directly.
that, we are also looking for radical but reasonable ideas. You can be very radical, revolutionary, but has to be somehow based on some kind of reason, some kind of research, some kind of evidence as well. So
I'll point
Gerald
out
has
a couple
yeah.
shows that we've had might exemplify it. So one, Scott brought in Caitlin Tucker, who had several books on blended learning. And blended learning is very, very important during COVID times. And a lot of teachers were, wondering what does it all entail. So we brought her in to talk about it, and so that was helpful. And similarly at the higher ed level, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had Brian Beatty come in to talk about high flex. So high flex has been a issue that's been debated across college campuses worldwide. If you read the Chronicle of Higher Ed during the past year, you've probably seen high flex several times, or inside higher ed as high flex. So Brian picked out 2 people, one from a community college in New Orleans, one from Pierce College in Philadelphia, who are implementing high flex. And the 3 of them came in to talk about the ins and outs, the pros and cons, the challenges they face with high flex, and why Brian. And so Brian's a former student of mine at Indiana, and he's done well at San Francisco State with high flex. And then the third one I'll point out, we had people from Puerto Rico come in who had gone through earthquakes, tropical storms, Hurricane Maria, and corruption. The government, the worst part was the corruption taking place in the Department of Ed. And so, they banned the mobile phone usage. And so my students had done a project to help train teachers in mobile phone, and I decided to invite them in. And then it was a sad show in some ways, but optimistic, because they overcame all those barriers and were still excited to be teachers, still excited to go to the classroom and help learners out. And so if people can survive all the things that Puerto Rico's gone through, we can survive this, and so those are just 3 more examples of the shows that we've had.
Gerald had a question about future guests. So Gerald, this is ascribing more foresight and planning to us than I think we collectively are capable of. So typically, we are scrambling. Curt is awesome. He manages to find guests from all over the place. He has friends everywhere. But honestly, it's hard because you're scheduling people and so on. So we do know a few weeks in advance, but it's typically the next week that we are utterly confident of. And there have been times when we've been like, okay, we screwed up, fine, let's find somebody. And then, Sean Lesher happened that way, and it ended up being a great episode. So I wish I could say that we have the thing mapped out for the next 52 weeks. Sadly, that is not the case.
I understand.
Well, we are the alternative. We are the alternative to Fox News. If you want to know, that.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to all of you, because I realize how much I've missed over the past year. Really, every time you mention something, I've been Googling it on the side. And so it's current events to you, but I think a lot of us just sort of missed the last several months as far as opportunities. This is great.
Oh,
You know, we
thank
could
you.
do a better job of that tracking of current events and talking to one another about, hey, this was picked up, you know, on this channel or whatever. And well, we do some of that, but even this, all these shows, there's still things that we've missed. And if you have suggestions, send us, send it our way. You know, Susie's here with, you know, we talked about bringing Susie and talk about UDL. So, you know, you might be getting an email soon, Susie.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the other thing is that the structure that we have right now, we have 4 episodes, and then we do one which is just the hosts sort of reflecting on the episodes that have gone past and other ideas that we can share. We have a small but very devoted following on YouTube. Because of getting international guests, our timings shift somewhat, so that also has a hit. But everything within 24 hours or 48 hours is archived on the website, so you can see the videos and so on. So
So we would love to get someone from this group. You know, if you guys have any ideas, if you've done something interesting, we just shoot an email to us. Be happy to talk to you guys. I think SITE is a great conference, you know, a great organization. And I think a lot of you, I've said, I think, and Jerry that was right, is that the last year, I think because of silver lining, at least the co-host of us have been kept up to date. We learned so much from so many different countries, from so many different groups. And I feel like that's what kept me sane. I've been in my house in Oregon for a year and a month, I'm counting. And I think I will take another 6 months before I can get out, but it's really, really beautiful. But so that's why it's great to be talking to you guys.
Gerald might appreciate the fact that we had the ISTE head president in, along with 3 colleagues of him from LA, from New Orleans, and I forget where the third one's from, talking about what ISTE, the future of ISTE, and what initiatives were taking place last summer. You know, the head of the LA school district for ed tech came in. So you're talking about tens of thousands of students. So it was fascinating to see the plans that they had in place during last summer and for teacher training, and they're ramping up teacher training to teach with COVID. In a few weeks, we'll have David Wiley, who you all probably know as one of the founding fathers of open education. So he'll either be May 1st or May 8th, I think May 1st, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We typically run these things on a Saturday, typically. Not every week, so you have to go to the website. We have a counter that has the countdown minutes, because we have participants from around the world, but typically 5:30 p.m., so 2:30 on the West Coast in the afternoon. And I'll also mention that AECT President Ali Carr-Chelman contacted us yesterday to possibly do a show with AECT. We've had ISTE. We did the Computer Educators Conference of Ireland a couple of weeks ago. And so word's getting out. It's great to be at SITE.
By the way, there's also is another thing to say how easy it is to start when you have the right people. Technology is no problem. I remember I scrambled. Curt pointed me to graduate students. We learned how to YouTube from Zoom, and it's actually says a lot about our students' power today with technology. You can have a global show, reach so many people with the really little support of anything. So that's another thing about our students' power. They can learn from anyone. They can learn with anyone. They can learn for anyone globally, fairly easily. I think it's not limit our students' learning. Another thing is about SITE. I know a big piece, I think, we have entered an age where learning is not confined to the classroom, where learning has escaped the schools. Learning has escaped the schools. That's a line from the late Richard Elmore, who just passed away at Harvard. He's been doing a lot of research. Also, this is a question for all of us to think about. How long can our schools last just pretending to certify students? And this might be COVID-19, might be the time that change will happen. I'm just invited to do a phone conversation with Sesame's workshop. They're talking about learning 22nd century skills. I said, what the heck is 22nd? We're still in the 21st, but this is, it's really Asian society and a system workshop they want to talk about. Learning 22nd. I think, I know I would die before that, but we'll have to talk about 22nd, century skills.
AECT has the Legends and Legacy videos, or you may not know, and they interview many people who has contributed to the field of ed tech. This is similar to that in many ways. This is a more current, and I actually think we had Barbara Lockett, who developed those videos into one of my classes recently, and she talked about AECT Legends and Legacy videos. This is like that, and people are using these videos in many ways. I'm using them in a class. If students watch so many of them, do reflection papers on them, they can delete one of the assignments. You have to combine the themes across the different videos that they watch. And so you might think of alternative uses. I think someone in here has mentioned, David mentioned the student podcast. But Punya's got an initiative right now where my students are doing something for the web. You want to explain what they're doing, Punya?
I actually have to hop off. I had to leave another meeting to get onto this one. Curt, I think you can take it from here. And thank you again, all of you, for joining. This is an exciting, and thank you, Elizabeth and Syed, for inviting us. Take care, and hopefully see you in San Diego in the flesh around some nice, cool mugs of beer. That'll be good.
That sounds lovely. Thank you, Punya.
We probably should wrap up with that then, Punya. Basically, our students are indexing and tagging. We're going to have a better tagging system on the website. So you all can
kick
find
us
things.
kick us out if you need to, and feel free to do that, Elizabeth. And I think we've talked a lot, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, we're so thrilled. I think you'll have a lot more people checking out Silver Lining for Learning. It's a wonderful opportunity when we get so mired in looking at what's right in front of us to kind of look up and get a bigger picture. And that's always been refreshing for me. So thank you for providing that. We have 3 more workshops this afternoon and the K-12 online learning SIG meeting. So there's a little more left of the conference, but thanks everyone for the great conversations, and so wonderful to see you all.
Thanks everybody for inviting us in. The world is open. We get a picture. Everyone raise their hands. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.